There's a word they don't want you to know. A word so powerful it's been erased from ancient sacred texts, removed from modern translations, whispered only among the initiated. Eckhart Tolle discovered this word by accident, and when he first uttered it, everything changed. But before I reveal this word, you need to understand why it was hidden from you. Why for centuries, those who held spiritual power made sure it remained silent. Because this word, it doesn't need intermediaries. It doesn't need institutions, elaborate ceremonies, or even blind faith. It simply connects. And perhaps that's exactly why it was banished. Think with me for a moment. How many times have you felt spiritually lost? How many times have you searched for answers in books, in spiritual teachers, in complex rituals? And how many times did you leave with more questions than answers? I know how you feel. This endless searching. This feeling that the truth is always one step away, but never within your reach. But what if I told you the answer has always been inside you? That there's a way to access the divine source that doesn't depend on anything external. A way the ancients knew, but that was deliberately erased from our collective memory. Eckhart Tolle didn't plan on finding this word. In fact, he was at the darkest point in his life. Depressed, suicidal, hopeless. It was on one of these dark nights of the soul that something extraordinary happened. He was there, at the absolute limit of despair, when an inner voice whispered a word, a single word, and the moment he uttered it, the ego fell silent. Not for a few minutes, not for a few hours, for months. He describes this experience as if he'd been transported to a completely different dimension of reality, a dimension where the separation between him and the universe simply vanished. But here's what intrigues me most about this story. When Eckhart began sharing this experience with ancient scholars, with translators of sacred texts, with people who dedicated their entire lives to spiritual study, they recognized the word immediately. And they all said the same thing. This word was purposefully removed from the texts that reached the general public. Why? Because it's too dangerous for those who profit from your spiritual seeking. Imagine a word that connects you directly to the divine source, without rituals, without dogma, without monthly payments, without hierarchies. Imagine the impact that would have on entire systems built on the idea that you need an intermediary to access the sacred. Now you understand why it was hidden. But before I reveal this word to you, I need to prepare you. Because once you know it, once you experience its power, there's no turning back. Your perception of reality will change forever. Your relationship with what you call self will be completely transformed. And maybe, just maybe, you'll never feel alone in the universe again. Are you ready for this? Because what I'm about to share with you is not just a word, it's a key. A key that unlocks a door you didn't even know existed. But this door, it leads inward, to the most intimate place of your being. To the silent center where all the answers have always been waiting. The word is no, not yet. Before I reveal it, you need to understand how this discovery changed not only Eckhart's life, but the understanding of thousands of people around the world. People who were exactly like you now, searching and questioning, feeling that something was missing. Sarah from New York wrote to me saying that after knowing this word, she finally managed to silence the constant voice of anxiety that had tormented her for years. Marcus from Los Angeles said that for the first time in his life, he felt a peace that didn't depend on anything external. No circumstance, no person, no achievement. Anna from Austin described the experience as finally coming home, as if all her life she had been a stranger in her own body. And now she was complete. But here's what strikes me most about these stories. All these people report the same phenomenon. The moment they uttered this word for the first time, they felt as if something ancient within them awakened, as if a part of the soul that had been dormant for a long time finally opened its eyes. And you know what's even more intriguing? This feeling isn't new. It's not invented. It's not suggestion. It's recognition. Like when you meet someone you haven't seen in years, but instantly recognize. Like when you return to a childhood place and feel that deep familiarity. This word awakens something that has always been there. It doesn't add anything to your essence. It simply removes everything that is not you. And perhaps that's exactly what the established powers fear. Not that you gain something new, but that you remember who you always were. An infinite being, unlimited, connected to everything that exists. A being that doesn't need permission to access the divine, because you are the divine. But they spent centuries convincing you otherwise, making you believe that you are small, limited, separated, needing external salvation. And this word, it undoes all that illusion in an instant. It's as if all your life you've lived in a dark room, and suddenly someone turns on the light, and you realize that the darkness was never real. It was just the absence of light. Similarly, all separation, all spiritual seeking, all the feeling of being lost, all of this is just the absence of recognizing your true nature. And this word, it's the light switch. But here's what I need to tell you about how I discovered this. I didn't believe it. When I first heard about this word, my rational mind completely rejected it. How can a simple word have so much power? I was skeptical, questioning. I needed concrete proof, so I decided to test it for myself. The first time I uttered this word, honestly, I felt nothing. My mind was too noisy, full of expectations and judgments. But Eckhart had said something important. The word doesn't work for the mind. It works through the mind. So I tried a different approach. Instead of uttering it with my mind, I tried to feel it with my heart. Instead of analyzing it, I tried to simply be with it. And that's when it happened. It wasn't dramatic like I expected, no blinding lights, no mystical visions. It was more like a deep sigh I'd been holding for years, finally being released, as if something inside me completely relaxed, as if I finally stopped fighting something I didn't even know I was fighting. And in that relaxation, in that letting go, something revealed itself, a presence, silent yet incredibly alive, peaceful yet vibrant with energy. It wasn't something new. It was something that had always been there, but I'd never noticed because I was too busy searching outside. And then I understood why this word is so powerful. It doesn't do anything. It simply stops everything. It stops the searching, the struggling, the constant striving to be someone other than who you are. And when everything stops, what remains is you, the real you, not the you you think you are, not the you others tell you you are, not the you constructed from memories and expectations, the eternal you, the indestructible you, the you that was here before the first thought and will be here after the last. And that you, it was never separate from anything. It never needed salvation, never needed improvement, never needed completeness. It always was complete, always was sacred, always was connected to everything that exists. The word simply removes the veil that hides this truth. But let me tell you about the exact moment I knew this was real. 3 days after my first experience with this word, something extraordinary happened. I was walking down the street, completely absorbed in my usual thoughts, worries about work, relationships, the future, when suddenly silence. Not the silence of sounds around me, the silence of the mind. And in that silence, I realized something that changed my perception forever. I realized that what I had always called myself was actually just a collection of thoughts and sensations. And these thoughts, they were happening in something much bigger, like waves happening in the ocean. And in that moment, I was no longer the waves. I was the ocean. I was the consciousness in which all thoughts, all feelings, all experiences were appearing. And that consciousness, it was infinite, untouchable, perfect. It was in that moment that I understood why the ancients guarded this word like a secret treasure, because it doesn't just connect you with the divine, it reveals that you were never separate from the divine. And when you realize that, when you really realize it, all suffering becomes optional, because all suffering comes from identifying with the waves, with the temporary thoughts, with the fleeting emotions. But when you recognize that you are the ocean, the waves can come and go. They don't affect you anymore. You remain at peace, no matter what happens on the surface. And perhaps that's what they fear most. Not that you become powerful, but that you become uncontrollable. Because how do you control someone who no longer identifies with fear? How do you manipulate someone who has found unconditional peace? How do you sell solutions to someone who has discovered there never was a problem? Now you're ready. Ready to know the word they removed from the ancient sacred texts, the word Eckhart discovered on that dark night, the word that can change your life forever. But before I reveal it, I need to give you a warning. Once you know it, once you experience its power, you can never again pretend you don't know. You can never again hide behind the excuse that you don't have access to the divine, because you will, and you will know you always have. The word is, I am. Seems too simple, doesn't it? Maybe even disappointing, but let me explain why this is the most dangerous word that exists. When you say I am, without adding anything after, you are making the most powerful statement possible. You are not saying, I am sad, or I am happy, or I am successful, or I am a failure. You are simply stating your pure existence, your essence before any identification. And that essence, it is divine. In the Old Testament, when Moses asked God what his name was, the answer was, I am that I am. Jesus said, before Abraham was, I am. In the oldest Vedic texts, the ultimate realization is Tattvam Asi, thou art that. The recognition that your essence and the divine essence are one. But here's what happened over the centuries. This simple and powerful truth was complicated. It was wrapped in complex rituals, in religious hierarchies, in dogmas that separate you from the sacred instead of bringing you closer. Because if you truly understand that when you say, I am, you are uttering God's own name. If you truly understand that your consciousness and divine consciousness are the same thing, then what do you need intermediaries for? That's why this word was hidden, not literally removed from all texts, but its true power was obscured, diluted, buried under layers of interpretation. But Eckhart rediscovered this power in the purest way possible, on that night of despair, when his mind was completely exhausted from struggling. When all his usual identities had crumbled, he uttered those two words, I am, and instantly recognized that the I that is aware of all thoughts, of all feelings, of all experiences, that I is indestructible, that I was never born and will never die, that I is the consciousness itself in which all existence appears. And when you pronounce I am with this understanding, something magical happens. You stop identifying with the content of consciousness and begin to identify with consciousness itself. It's like you stop confusing yourself with the images on the screen and recognize that you are the screen. The images may change, joyful, sad, dramatic, peaceful, but the screen remains untouched. Similarly, all your thoughts, emotions, and experiences may change, but the I am that is aware of them remains constant. And that I am, it is perfect, it is complete, it is sacred. But let me show you how to use this word practically, because it's not enough to know it intellectually. You need to experience it. First technique, anchoring in the present. Whenever you notice your mind is lost in the future or stuck in the past, simply whisper to yourself, I am. Not I am worried or I am anxious, just I am. Feel these words resonating in your chest. Let them bring you back to the only moment that truly exists, the present moment, the only place where the divine can be found. Second technique, the dissolution of identification. When you catch yourself saying things like, "I am a failure," or "I'm not good enough," stop immediately. Take a deep breath and correct yourself. I am having thoughts of failure, but I am. I am feeling inadequacy, but I am. See the difference? You're not denying the thoughts or feelings. You're simply remembering that you are bigger than them. You are the consciousness in which they appear. Third technique, the I am meditation. Every morning, before you begin your day, dedicate 5 minutes to this simple yet profound practice. Sit comfortably, close your eyes, and begin to mentally repeat, I am. Not as a mechanical mantra, but as a loving acknowledgement of your true nature. With each repetition, feel yourself relaxing more deeply into your essence. After a few minutes, stop repeating and simply rest in that sensation of I am. Rest in the pure awareness of existing and observe what happens. In the beginning, your mind may resist. It may create distractions, urgent thoughts, physical discomfort. This is normal. The mind isn't accustomed to having nothing to do, nothing to solve, nothing to improve, but persist. Gently return to the I am whenever you get lost. And in time, you will begin to experience something extraordinary. You will begin to realize there is a peace that doesn't depend on circumstances, a happiness that needs no reason, a completeness that requires no additions. And this peace, this happiness, this completeness, they are you, not something you possess, not something you achieve, something you are. But here's where things get really interesting. As you practice this simple technique, as you anchor yourself more and more in the I am, something begins to shift in your outer life. People begin to perceive you differently. There's a presence about you that wasn't there before. The problems that used to consume you begin to lose their dramatic urgency. They may still exist, but you are no longer identified with them. You develop what I like to call emotional immunity. Not because you become insensitive, but because you find an unshakable center within yourself. And perhaps most importantly, you stop seeking. You stop searching for happiness outside. Stop expecting other people to complete you. Stop believing that your peace depends on external achievements, because you've discovered the source within yourself. And once you find that source, you realize it was always there. You were always complete. You were always sacred. You were always connected to everything that exists. The only thing that changed was your perception. Emily, from New York, wrote to me after 3 months of practicing this technique. She said that for the first time in 40 years of life, she feels like she knows herself. Not the versions of myself I constructed to please others, she wrote, but who I truly am beneath it all. Marcus from Los Angeles reported that his chronic anxiety simply vanished, not gradually, overnight. I realized all the anxiety came from identifying with thoughts about the future, he explained. But when I anchor myself in the I am, there is no future to worry about. There is only this moment. And Olivia from Austin had perhaps the most profound realization of all. I finally understood why Jesus said the kingdom of heaven is within us, she told me. It's not a metaphor, it's literal. The divine isn't somewhere distant. It is our own essence. These aren't isolated stories. They are examples of something that happens when you rediscover your true nature, when you stop looking outside for what was always inside. But let me share with you the most profound realization I had about this word. I am is not just a spiritual technique, it's a scientific recognition. Modern quantum physics is discovering what mystics have always known. Consciousness is fundamental to existence. It's not something produced by the brain. It's that in which the brain and everything else appears. When you say I am, you are identifying with this fundamental consciousness. You are recognizing that you are not a separate person having occasional spiritual experiences. You are pure consciousness having a temporary human experience. And this consciousness, it is one. The same consciousness that is reading these words now is the same consciousness that is in the trees outside, in the birds flying, in the stars shining. Not multiple consciousnesses. One consciousness appearing as multiplicity, like an actor playing multiple characters, but always remaining the same actor. When you truly understand this, when you truly feel this, all fear disappears. How can you fear death when you recognize that you are life itself? How can you feel alone when you recognize that you are everything that exists? How can you feel inadequate when you recognize that you are perfection itself? This is what they don't want you to know. This is what has been hidden from you for so long. Not that you need to become sacred, but that you already are sacred. Not that you need to find God, but that you were never separate from God. Not that you need to transform, but that you simply need to remember who you always were. And remembering is simple. 2 words. I am. But these 2 words, they contain the entire universe. Now you might be wondering, if it's so simple, why doesn't it work for everyone? The answer is that it works for everyone. It always works. What doesn't work is the resistance of the mind. The mind has been conditioned to believe that you are the thoughts, the feelings, the personal history. And when you begin to identify with something greater, the mind resists. It will create doubts. It will say that this is too simple to be true. It will try to convince you that you need something more elaborate, more difficult, more special. But that is exactly the trap. The truth is always simple. It is our complication that obscures it. A child utters, I am, with complete naturalness. To them, it's obvious that they exist, that they are pure consciousness. It's only when we grow up and accumulate identities that we forget, but it's never too late to remember. And the remembering, it can happen now, not tomorrow, not after years of practice. Now, because there is nothing to achieve, nothing to develop, nothing to purify. There is only something to recognize. And that recognition, that awareness, is available right now. So, take the test, right now. Stop thinking for a moment. Stop analyzing. Simply whisper to yourself, I am, and feel it. Feel the living presence that you are. Feel the consciousness that's reading these words. Feel the being that existed before the first thought and will exist after the last. That being, that's you. Not a better version of you, not some enlightened future you. The you that's here, now, perfect, complete, divine. And maybe you finally understand why this word was hidden. Because when you recognize who you really are, when you realize you carry the entire universe within you, when you feel the infinite presence that is your true nature, you become untouchable, not through arrogance, but through love. Love for yourself, love for life, love for everything that exists, because everything that exists is you. And you are everything that exists. 2 aspects of the same infinite consciousness, playing hide and seek with itself. And now you've been found. Welcome home.